Hi, this is Anna Liptak. As part of the Healthy Habits Challenge, a big part of it is, as you know, diet. Everything that we put in our mouth makes us up how we feel, how we act, and what we do every day. And I'm really excited today to be speaking to a doctor, Dr. Harrison Weisinger, who's going to talk about the science of nutrition. Because in essence, this is the biggest part of the challenge. So if you can get your head around the nutrition part, you are going to get tremendous results. I'm extremely excited to be chatting with Dr. Harrison Weisinger today. I've now been a fitness and health coach for over 15 years and have seen countless doctors, integrated doctors and naturopaths on the hunt for answers to the key to performance, health and nutrition. I was lucky enough to be introduced to Dr. Harry a few weeks ago, maybe 10 weeks ago, who has helped me to turn my life around. I'd almost given up hope. I'm nearly 50, and I thought that was it. I'd almost given up my fitness training as a coach last year, which is something I really didn't want to do, but I felt like I was missing something. Doctors were dismissing me because my heart rate was 39, my bloods were all great, and I felt like I knew there wasn't something right for me for over the past 10 years. So finally I found a doctor who understands health and nutrition. And so I'm very grateful for you being here today, Dr. Harry. One, for chatting with all my clients, but mostly also to say thank you for helping me. My clients, I've been training some of them now for 15 years, and they will be very interested. I know you've studied and done so much work over 17 years. So thank you for sharing that with us today. I really appreciate it.
I think my relevant background is that I did my master's and PhD in nutrition, and in particular, I was looking at the role of diet on brain development and visual development. And then my interest sort of wandered into the role of dietary omega-3 fatty acids on blood pressure control and body weight regulation. As you know, I'm a medical practitioner. I trained in general practice, but always had a special interest in weight loss because I saw that there was a great opportunity to prevent illness before it occurred by helping people to lose weight and to eat better. And in the last couple of years, I have run a clinic that specialises in weight loss, high performance, and also with a focus just on general wellness and longevity.
Fantastic. So all of that really resonated with me because I know that you can be healthy, but you cannot also not be fit, or you can be fit and not healthy. So I really resonate with that. So, as a trainer, one of the most common reasons people start to exercise with me is to lose weight. And when they start training with me, they think they can eat more. And really, they're only training, let's say, Harry, maybe 2 to 3 hours a week. So it's really frustrating to me as a trainer because it's like a bit like banging my head against a wall. It's a bit like saying you can't actually eat more. You're actually not doing more than what we should actually be doing, which I believe is a half an hour at least a day. And they're only doing 2 to 3 hours in their week. So that's really frustrating to me. What do you think about that sort of?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think you're right. A lot of people think that maybe a lot of people exercise so they can eat more. That's one explanation, but it doesn't take a lot of, deep exploration to realise that an hour of hard exercise will probably burn somewhere around 5 to 800 calories at the most, which you could take in the form of food or drink in a matter of minutes.
Yeah. So, isn't that interesting?
So the reality is you simply can't exercise enough to offset a bad eating, let's say.
So what is the key to weight loss if it's not just about fitness? Because I know the fitness is very important, exercise, people need to move. But what's the real key to weight loss?
I think fundamentally the key is pretty simple, but with a few caveats. Let's consider that we take calories in the form of food and drink, and we expend calories for just maintaining bodily functions, our basal metabolic rate, and then any activity on top of that. In general, though, as I said, with several caveats, it is a case of expending more energy than we take in. But not all calories are the same, and I'm not going to go into the complexity of it straight away, but the problem with eating less calories than we need, whilst effective as a weight loss approach, is the phenomenon of hunger. So what we really need to do, the secret to weight loss, is to reduce our caloric intake, but in a way that doesn't leave us starving or feeling like we're really, really, really hungry. So there are particular ways around hunger, because you have to remember that from an evolutionary point of view, the worst thing in the world is to have our energy stores depleted. We've evolved to protect these and defend these vigorously. And one of the mechanisms that we do that through is hunger. So when the body detects through various ways that we're losing weight, it will amplify the hunger signal. And we all know what this feels like. It strikes you when your defenses are down, when you're tired or when you're anxious or when you're busy with something else. Your increased appetite will strike and you'll reach for a bag of chips or a piece of chocolate or a soft drink or something like that that you know that you shouldn't have, but you do have because you're hungry and your defenses are down. So reiterating, the trick is really to reduce caloric intake in such a way that doesn't leave us hungry. And so there are particular foods and other approaches I use to help people to do that.
Yeah, and that's been really interesting for me because over the past years, I have had a very healthy diet. But what surprised me over the last 10 weeks or 8 weeks working with you is that you've introduced me to, I guess it's the keto diet. And I've been so surprised that I haven't been hungry. And because I know that you can explain that, but it's really taken out the hunger pains for me that I usually have, that I need to have snacks. I actually don't think about food anymore. And what you've got me to do, which I always knew, is food is actually just to fuel us. So if I'm really not doing much in the day, I actually don't need too much food, and I'm not hungry because of the key protein, carbohydrates and fats that you've introduced me to. Can you tell me about that? The key will tell all of us.
Fortunately, there's a lot more awareness of a ketogenic diet in recent years. It is one approach that I use with my patients. It's certainly not the only one, but I think it's a good one to start with.
Yeah.
In simple terms, a ketogenic diet is any diet that results in the appearance of ketones in the blood. Generally speaking, the easiest way to have that occur is to reduce the amount of carbohydrate in the diet. When we reduce carbohydrate in the diet, the body is forced to produce ketones. And it does so because the brain is quite selective in its preferred fuel. If there's no carbohydrate around, it needs ketones to function. We can make a little bit of carbohydrate from protein in our liver in a process called gluconeogenesis, but ketones are really important fuel for the brain. Now, when we lower our carbohydrate intake, we also lower the level of insulin that's circulating. And insulin, when it's low, allows for fat stores on and in our body to be liberated as fuel. And this is most of the success of a ketogenic diet, is that we are now able to provide fuel for ourselves as opposed to needing them to come from the diet. The second thing is that a ketogenic diet is quite high in fat, because if you've taken carbohydrate out, you have to eat something. So it's either fat or protein. And too much protein will result in, as I said, gluconeogenesis and the appearance of carbohydrate anyway. So we increase the amount of fat, and fat has a satiating quality to it. It tends to be slower to digest, sits in the small intestine where it's digested and absorbed, and it stimulates the release of hormones that do stop appetite. So it's multifaceted. But as you've experienced and I've experienced and countless others have experienced, the wonderful thing about a ketogenic diet is that you are liberated from hunger. You really then have the choice to ask yourself, why am I reaching for this piece of food? Is it because I'm hungry, or is it actually just because it's habitual? I'm nervous, some other reason. There are lots of reasons to eat, of course, but at least when we separate out hunger, we give ourselves more choices, which don't appear when you're really hungry. And I would also add that I agree with the statement that, food is fuel. It certainly is. We need it. It's its primary role. But of course, we enjoy food for lots of reasons. A ketogenic diet need not be one that excludes good food or food that we enjoy eating as well. So there are ways to incorporate a very low carbohydrate diet with one that is still enjoyable.
Yeah, and I guess I found that, I went out a couple of times at the beginning where I was a bit scared, and you sort of said, don't worry, just enjoy it, and that's really nice to know. You can just go out and enjoy yourself, and you really don't actually lose that much if you've been doing it 100%. So yeah, that was a really good learning for me too, that there is really no essentially bad, if you go out for one meal, you don't ruin everything. And I guess that's what a lot of people, when they come to me, because I run a healthy habits challenge, they think one night they've gone out, they've had a few drinks, they've had some chips and they've had a hamburger and it's all over, everything's gone, it's all ruined and they're bad. Whereas I think if you can just let yourself, breathe and go, it's okay and I can get back on this and it's no problem. I think it's a really easy and sustainable thing for you to live with. But just going on to that, I am an athlete at the moment. I wouldn't classify myself at that. But in training, how does a keto diet work with a performer, an athlete?
Really depends on the type of athletic performance that one is seeking. So what we do know is that the analogy I like to use, Anna, is that of a hybrid car, like a Prius. If you think about a Prius at very low velocity, a Prius is quite happy to use the battery. And then if you really put your foot down on the accelerator, it relies on petrol.
Yep.
And we're very similar in our metabolism when it comes to performance. When we're operating at low intensity, fat is a perfectly good substrate, and it takes a bit longer, and we're only talking milliseconds, but it takes a bit longer to burn fat than it does to burn glucose or to convert fat into energy as compared with converting carbohydrate into energy. So we can afford to burn fat at low intensity, but when it gets high, sort of below our threshold effort and threshold and above, we really need carbohydrate. Mm-hmm. So a ketogenic diet, which necessarily is depleting carbohydrate from the body, is not a great option for those athletes that are repeatedly at the top end of their aerobic and even into anaerobic metabolism. But for most people that are not competing at that level, it's perfectly appropriate to be on a ketogenic diet. Not only that, but it is still possible to perform interval training, which is, we know this is a very important part of fitness training. Can still perform intervals, can still perform strength training. So most things can be done on a ketogenic diet. And if not, then we can supplement the ketogenic diet with carbohydrate for specific sessions.
Yeah. So for the majority of my clients who I train, they just everyday people that come out and they want to get fitter and healthier and lose weight. So that ketogenic diet essentially could be okay until they got to their goals. But for some of my clients who, perform and run marathons, they could use it to get to, I guess, their goal weight, but use carbohydrates as a fuel. I guess I use caffeine that way for when I have long runs and stuff, because I don't generally have caffeine. I use it as my my battery. So I guess that's yeah. So do you think people could stay on a keto diet forever, or is it something that you sort of do? And how long does it take you to get fat adapted? That you're using your fat, because certainly I felt a shift in my body, and I can feel myself burning my fat now. But at the start, it did take a little while for me. But I can certainly feel it now. Like it's finally, I feel like I'm, 15 years younger, like I back was 10 years ago, because I did, I was at my prime, probably about 36, 38. I did work with a naturopath who worked on a similar diet that you've given me, which is similar to keto. But unfortunately, she moved on, but she didn't have the exercise component you've given to me. So it's a real eye-opener about the whole journey.
Yeah. Well, I like to take as you know, Anna, I like to take a long view. It begins as soon as you stop eating, okay? But to really, I guess, get good at producing ketones, or to reignite those metabolic pathways, it can take days to weeks, depending on the activity levels of the person prior to that. I've worked with athletes that are national champions that immediately improve their fat adaptation, and others that can feel pretty crappy for up to a few weeks before they're adapted. But that being said, that process continues to improve over time for years. So you can theoretically be on a ketogenic diet forever. Now, me personally, I don't love the ketogenic diet. I tend to get a bit bored with the food choices that I'm left with, although that's probably lack of imagination and the fact I'm not a very good cook. But I use it as a tool. Yeah. I cycle it. I want to be in ketosis for maybe 20 to 30% of the year. Mm-hmm. That's enough to keep me where I want to be, and I think to make the necessary changes in physiology that I'm looking for. I don't stray very far from my race weight, but it's about more than just race weight. You see, when we're calorie restricting, or we're carbohydrate restricting, or we're fasting, we are actually initiating changes at a cellular and subcellular level that improve our resistance to disease and therefore our chance of living a long, healthy life.
So what do you do for the other 70, 60% of the year? Do you just...
I actually think that I have a reasonably low carbohydrate diet most of the time. Mm-hmm. So I have habits now that I probably don't even think about. So it would be extraordinary for me to have carbohydrate at breakfast. And that's even when I'm not on a ketogenic diet. So typically I'll just have coffee with, some form of fat in it, and maybe some eggs for breakfast, or just nothing else. And then I'm still snacking in the middle of the day. So I'm eating things like pickles and peanuts and pieces of cheese. Or salad. So I think even when I'm, eating carbohydrate quite happily, it tends to be at one end of the day or another.
Yeah.
The other thing, Anna, that I do, again, it's one of these things that you cycle better, or power to you if you can do it more of the time. But intermittent fasting is known to be a very effective approach, not only for weight loss, but for health and longevity. So we know from animal studies, and we're starting to know from human studies, that calorie restriction and intermittent fasting does improve lifespan. So, this is certainly something I'm interested in. I introduce my patients to, but it's important for them to, I guess, master a ketogenic diet first.
Yep.
Because fasting from a standing start is miserable, whereas fasting from a fat-adapted start is quite easy. I mean, my wife and I have fasted for 2 days at a time, but I would never dream of doing that from a normal diet. It's really something that needs to be sort of built up to, in my view.
Yep. And I have heard other talks that you've talked about, and you've talked about your 3-day fasting that you do, as opposed to, and there's some people who do 4, 5, 6. Is there a time that is shown to be scientifically the best for it, or?
I think it's the longer the better, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you've got to balance that against reality. And, after my last 2-day fast, I was dead on my feet. I couldn't think straight. I actually had to eat because I couldn't think.
Yeah.
So yeah, the more, the longer you fast, the more you're activating autophagy or recycling of, the broken cellular material, and it's better for you.
What does it do to your organs and things like your heart and things have the effect?
I don't know that we have conclusive information about that, but I'm anticipating that if there are studies that exist or studies in progress, they're going to show improvements, certainly in things like liver function. I don't know about kidney function. Resistance to atherosclerosis, resistance to things like Alzheimer's disease. I'm certain these will be the case.
Wow. Yeah, it's really fascinating, isn't it? What we put in our body really makes us up how we feel and behave and act every day. And the more people realise that and understand that, then you really have the power to put in your body what you want. That's your choice. And like you said at the start, we make millions of choices every day, and we have all these different habits. And I guess for a number of my clients, Harry, they might be back more at the start, so not so much at that fasting. Like you said, don't go straight into the 3, 4, 5. But back trying to understand, I guess also the carbohydrate, which has always been a little bit of a mystery to me. And I know, you've explained it to me, and it makes so much more sense to me now, like even potatoes and sweet potatoes, and going back to those basic levels of how they turn into sugar. Is that right? Yep. Can you tell?
Well, they're mostly comprised of carbohydrate, or they've got very high carbohydrate content, which is, carbohydrate is just the blanket term for sugar or things made up of sugars put together.
Yes. So that's, our body just wants to use that straight away, doesn't it? So it won't burn. Is that right? Like it just won't burn the fat.
Yeah. The analogy I heard once, and I can't remember who I heard this from, is, I'm trying to remember who I really should credit them. It might be Jason Fung, who's a well-known endocrinologist, but if it's not, apologies. But the analogy I heard was, think of carbohydrate as the fridge and fat as the deep freezer down in the cellar. Okay. As long as there's food in the fridge, you're not going down to the cellar. Okay. You're gonna keep going back to the fridge, back to the fridge, back to the fridge. Well, the same goes for carbohydrate and fat. Whilst there's carbohydrate in the system, you're not going to metabolize fat. And there's lots of reasons for that, predominantly insulin. I did want to just say, Anna, just for because something you said in the last question triggered me to think that we used to, you remember advice like, small regular meals.
Oh, yes.
Or make sure you have breakfast, or breakfast is the most important meal of the day, et cetera, et cetera. Well, all this stuff turns out to be absolutely bad information.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
That's a real tragedy. And that combined with the healthy food pyramid, which is a base of carbohydrate and a bit less protein and a tiny amount of fat, because fats are really bad or were thought to be bad. Well, now what we know is almost the opposite is true. It's actually better not to eat. It's better to reduce calories. It's better to not eat for as long as possible. It's better to put yourself into difficulty, whether it be altitude or exercise or heat or cold or things like that. We're now starting to understand trigger very powerful processes at a cellular and subcellular level that keep us healthy. And the opposite is also true. When we're in a growth phase, it's more things are likely to go wrong. So when we eat, we are introducing nutrient, and that triggers all these growth factors that are the same ones that can also lead to bad outcomes at a cellular level, vis-a-vis in the long term, coronary artery disease, metabolic disease, neuroinflammation, and so forth. So it's quite the opposite. It's quite a change in thinking that we've all had to go through in the last sort of, I guess it's 20 years now. We're starting to understand, that less really is more.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because, we all were brought up with you eat your 3 meals and you eat single thing on that plate, or you don't get to do this. So, our parents, have instigated that into us. And that's really changed my thoughts too with working with you, is that, well, I'm not hungry, so I'm not eating. There's sometimes I get to lunchtime and go, well, I should be eating, but I actually am not hungry at the moment, but I might be hungry later. And I've really enjoyed that, because I don't feel like I have to eat all the time, but I'm eating when I want to, and I'm eating foods that I love, because I actually love all the health. Like I love healthy foods. Like I am a big believer about, any food that comes out of the ground is really what we should be eating, and that's what the nutrients it should be giving to our body. So I'm really pleased that you, I guess, gave me that information, and now giving everyone else that you don't always have to eat. What would you say to someone who, I guess, is really struggling at that point of weight? I guess I'd got to that point. I'd seen doctors for the last 10 years, because it was interesting for me, Harry, from starting marathon running. I was quite small to begin with. I was like a size 8. And then I got bigger each year. And as I went to doctors, they've just sort of, I guess, dismiss is a bit harsh, but they couldn't see anything wrong with me, because obviously I was healthy and probably healthier than them. What would you say to someone who like me, knows that there's something not quite right, but, what do you do? Like, how do you navigate that? And I mean, now my people will know about you, so they can contact you.
It's a really difficult one, Anna, because doctors like myself are trained to operate best in an environment of bad health. Medicine is a wonderful profession, and there's knowledge expansion at an exponential rate. Doctors are having to understand more and more and are getting better and better. But the fact remains that we as a profession are not much chop until the wheels start coming off, or at least until we have a test that detects something is awry. And you clearly didn't fit into that bucket. So if your blood test parameters fell within the normal range, and your body weight fell within the normal range, and how you appeared was in the normal range, you're not really going to trigger any of the detectors that a doctor uses. Either the heuristics or the guidelines that they adhere to won't be violated enough to make a move. So that's what I've just said is really unhelpful because I haven't given you an answer. But at the same time, doctors have so much useful information.
Yes.
And it's just a gap between, because they know how to help someone with diabetes, but they don't quite know how to help someone that has all of the features of diabetes without the diagnostic feature, without that very last feature, which is your fasting blood sugar is greater than 7, right?
Yeah.
But it could be, so your blood sugar could be in the normal range, but for 20 years you could be headed towards it, and you just simply won't trigger the flag in the doctor's mind or against the guideline. Now, I am absolutely not having a go at medicine because
no, me either.
It has such a tough job dealing with the people that are already outside the normal range. So what do you do for someone that is still, in inverted commas, healthy, but doesn't trigger a reaction from a doctor? Well, exactly what we've talked about. You need to start with some simple stuff. I think it's very helpful to have someone helping you. You know, people respond really well to coaches, to mentors, to doctors, you know, fitness instructors, people like yourself, people like me. We have a really important role to play. I don't believe that people need to stay under my care for all that long. I think it's a case of educating people, to empower them to make the right decisions more often than not. I'm not here to tell people that their behaviour is shit, and I'm a human, so I know exactly what it feels like to want to eat a whole pizza. All right, and I've done it, and I've had too many drinks, and I haven't slept enough, and I've done everything that everyone else does. Okay, but what this is about for me is about just making enough good choices on balance, not living like monks, but just understanding where the easy wins are, understanding how to start a good habit that's actually not that hard to make. It's actually not that hard to not eat toast and jam at breakfast. It's not, right? So get the easy wins, get some good nutritional advice. And if that nutritional advice doesn't sound like reduced carbohydrate intake, then go and find someone else, because almost always that's the place to start. Just reduce your carbohydrate intake. That'd be a good thing. Increase your healthy fat intake, things like fish and avocado and eggs and nuts, coconut, that sort of stuff. All right. Eat fattier foods, because they'll suppress your appetite, and then be mindful of your behaviour as you reach into the pantry. Why am I doing this? That's what I would say. It's obviously, I'm making it sound quite simple. It is a bit more complicated. You and I know that. This is why we have a role to play. So people should get help is my first thing. The other cautionary note is be careful what you read on the internet, because, well, it's unmoderated. So, I don't know what percentage of my time I spend putting out fires that were started on the internet, but there's a lot of information on the internet and some of it's true, put it that way.
Yeah, and I think that's really fantastic advice that you've given. And I guess through, you know, the work that I do with people as a coach, you know, I really encourage them to move and eat healthier. Sometimes people come to me and they say that their doctor's about to put them on cholesterol or blood pressure tablets, and then they go back within 6 weeks of working with me, like increasing steps, you know, maybe just 10,000 steps a day, and they do some strength training and they do eat healthier, which is basically cutting out, you know, the sugars and things really, essentially. And then the doctor will say to them, it's a miracle, what have you done? And really it's not a miracle. So it's, you know, I'm like you, you know, that the GPs and everything have their place, and often they are for the really sick. But when you're heading down a track, really, it's really nice to find, you know, that nutrition is actually essential, and sometimes more favourable than medication, and you don't need to be on lifelong medication. So, it's really nice to, I guess, with you is find a doctor that's actually got a PhD in nutrition, because that obviously, you don't always do that. So one thing that I found really interesting myself is the keto breath analysis. And I found that really great for me because it sort of keeps me on track and interested and engaged. It's a bit like that accountability. What are your thoughts on that sort of thing?
Well, you know my thoughts on this, Anna. I believe in the magic of measurement. So all of the people I look after have to measure various, I guess, health data points, including the ketones in their breath, also their weight, the body composition, what they're eating, because the very act of looking changes the outcome. It's like magic. We know that we know this from all other aspects of our lives, right? If you work in business, you can't run a business without measuring certain things, and yet people don't use those same principles for their own health. Of course, all of us know that when we are interested in losing weight, say, we jump on the scales every day, twice a day, 3 times a day. You go to the toilet, jump on again. Yes. Everyone knows that. We're all the same. Okay, because we want to see the lowest number. But what do we do when we're not feeling great about our weight, or when we're not?
Don't go anywhere near it.
We don't go anywhere near it. So the reverse is what we need to do. When we aren't interested, right, we still need to jump on. Just jumping on will change the outcome. And I do it myself. When I really don't want to, I either get on the scales or I start measuring what I'm eating. I put it straight into my MyFitnessPal. Yep, I had a donut. Yep, I had a, whatever. And at the end of the day, it goes, yep, you had 350 grams of carbohydrate today. And it changes it. The next day I won't be doing that. I'm sure of it. Yeah.
So what we can't measure, we can't monitor, which is the same with people with their fitness. People don't want to, when they first come out to me, they don't want to do the 1K, 2K run because they're like, I can only walk. And I'm like, well, at least you'll have some base that we can see that your progress, because without that, you get fitter and faster, but you don't actually realise it, because when you get fitter and faster, you still want to be faster again. So you never realise your progress. And I think that's part of health and fitness, is you've got to celebrate your small wins, because it's not always going to be big wins. And I think, the essence of this whole thing is that if you have your health and you've got your body and you feel good, other components of your life just fall into place. Your relationships become better. You're a better parent. You're a better everything, So this is the one thing that we can control in our life. And, and we've got to look after it. Like you said, if we want a long, healthy life, we need to, look after it.
100% agree.
We have to find coaches, and I have coaches in all different areas of my life, and I feel like I've got a great mentor in you now too. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing all your time and being able to share that with all my people. So if they wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best way of that?
So the best way is to email me directly, Dr. Harry, Dr. Harry at myperformancedoctor.com, or go to my website, which is myperformancedoctor with doctor spelt out.com.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because you are a cyclist and have been a cyclist for a long time, and obviously achieved lots in your athletics. Yep.
I am, thank you. And well, the way I like to put it is I'm a professional cyclist in a C grade body, but no, I too have a fantastic cycling coach who's helped me to achieve lots of stuff. So again, just to the point that we made about finding good people to help you, I think it's really important to have someone like you, Anna, for your people, athletes and mums and dads and whoever, just to get good advice, good sources of information.
And be accountable too. I think it's that accountability. I've got accountability to you now, so I know that I can talk to you and people can do that to me, which is great. And I know that you're watching. So I think that's really nice to have someone who's vested, and I'm really vested in people's health and fitness just as you are. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time, because I know you're very busy. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. Pleasure to join you.